Imagine being sidelined on one of the most important days of your family's life, feeling overlooked, excluded, and powerless while everyone else celebrates. You're told you don't belong, your presence is denied, and yet, deep inside, you know that this is not the end of your story. What if I told you that sometimes the moments meant to humiliate us, to push us aside, can become the very moments that define our strength, intelligence, and influence? Today, I'm going to take you through a story of patience, strategy, and the quiet power of turning exclusion into a statement no one can ignore. It's a story about transforming frustration into empowerment, about turning absence into presence, and about proving that true impact doesn't always come from being in the spotlight. It comes from understanding timing, observation, and the art of subtle influence. From the very first second, you'll feel the tension, the curiosity, and the suspense as every move unfolds. You'll witness how a carefully orchestrated act, executed with patience and insight, can turn what seems like a disadvantage into a powerful triumph. By the end of this story, you won't just see the result. You'll understand the strategy, the thought, and the intelligence behind every decision, and how even the quietest actions can leave the loudest impression. Stay with me till the very end, because this isn't just a story about a gift or a wedding. It's a story about resilience, creativity, and the extraordinary strength that comes from being underestimated and then proving, in the most unforgettable way, that your presence cannot be ignored. You're about to see how patience, strategy, and insight can transform a moment of exclusion into one of triumph that resonates long after the event has ended. Growing up in a family where it often felt like my presence didn't quite matter, I learned early on what it meant to be overlooked. From birthdays to holidays, there were subtle signs that I was somehow less important, less noticed, less celebrated. It wasn't that anyone openly rejected me, but the small, constant omissions built a sense of invisibility that followed me everywhere. Watching my sister receive attention for even the simplest achievements, while my own successes were met with polite nods or half-hearted praise, created a quiet resentment that simmered beneath the surface. At family gatherings, I became an expert at fading into the background, smiling when everyone laughed at moments I felt I had no part in, learning to observe rather than participate. The feeling of being the invisible one wasn't just frustrating, it shaped the way I understood my place in the family hierarchy. I began to notice patterns: who got congratulated, who received gifts, whose opinions were sought. There was a ritual to being noticed, and I was rarely part of it. The weight of exclusion, though subtle, was relentless. I started internalizing it, questioning why my efforts, my thoughtfulness, my attempts to connect, seemed to vanish into a void. Over time, this invisibility became more than just a feeling. It became motivation. I learned to pay attention to the small gestures that carried the most meaning, to notice how the family reacted to attention, approval, and gifts. I began quietly planning, imagining ways to assert myself without direct confrontation, ways to ensure that when the moment came, my presence could no longer be ignored. Each overlooked birthday and dismissed comment fed a determination to claim acknowledgement in a way that couldn't be denied. It was in these quiet, unnoticed moments that the seed of future strategy was planted, forming in my mind a plan that combined patience with precision, subtlety with impact. The first key realization was that invisibility can be a powerful teacher, that being underestimated allows one to observe, learn, and prepare. The frustration of being overlooked became the fuel for creativity, for the careful crafting of a moment that would force the family to finally see me, not through direct confrontation or loud declarations, but through something impossible to ignore, a revelation designed to leave its mark in a single, unforgettable instant. The moment I learned that I wasn't allowed to attend my sister's wedding, the shock hit me harder than I could have imagined. It wasn't just about missing a ceremony, it was the culmination of years of feeling sidelined, and now it was being formalized in a way that felt deliberately exclusionary. The invitation restriction wasn't explained in detail, just a firm decision, as if my absence was expected to go unnoticed, as if my presence was somehow irrelevant to the celebration. A wave of disbelief washed over me, quickly followed by a swirl of anger, confusion, and hurt. I couldn't understand how something as significant as a wedding, a milestone that should bring families together, could be used as a tool to highlight my marginalization. In that moment, I felt a sharp clarity. I wasn't just upset about missing an event. I was enraged at the principle of being intentionally ignored, at the audacity of deciding my place in the family without my input. I replayed memories of past celebrations, of moments when I had felt invisible, and realized that this ban wasn't an isolated act, it was part of a pattern. Each slight, each overlooked birthday, each unacknowledged achievement led to this, and now it was official. I began to analyze what this restriction meant emotionally and psychologically. It was meant to humiliate, to make me feel small in front of the family, to reinforce a hierarchy in which my significance was minimized. But instead of letting anger control me impulsively, I started thinking strategically. I considered the psychological impact of absence versus presence, and how absence could be a tool rather than a punishment. If I couldn't participate in the wedding directly, perhaps I could make my mark indirectly, in a way that would be impossible to ignore and would leave a lasting impression. The restriction forced me to examine the family dynamics more closely, to see who truly held attention, who expected acknowledgement, and who would react when the unexpected occurred. I realized that this ban, intended to silence and exclude me, could instead become the catalyst for a plan that would not only assert my presence but also invert the intended shame into astonishment. Being banned from the wedding wasn't just a blow to my ego, it became the challenge, the opportunity, the spark that ignited a carefully crafted response. Every moment of frustration was stored, every emotion sharpened into focus, and the understanding grew that the perfect moment of revelation could be orchestrated in a way that turned absence into the loudest statement of all. Once I accepted the reality that I would not be allowed to attend my sister's wedding, my thoughts shifted from anger to careful planning. The initial sting of exclusion gave way to a slow-burning determination to turn the situation around, to transform what was meant as punishment into an opportunity for impact. I began to analyze the situation with the precision of someone studying a chessboard, considering every possible angle, every small detail that could be leveraged to my advantage. The key was subtlety. Direct confrontation would only reinforce the narrative that I was being excluded for a reason, but a well-executed, indirect approach could ensure that my presence was felt in a way no one could ignore. I reflected on past family gatherings and observed how moments of surprise or unexpected attention created the most lasting impressions. It became clear that the medium of the gift could carry the weight of my presence even without me being physically there. I needed something that was carefully calculated, something that appeared innocent on the surface but held a deeper significance that would command attention. Choosing the right gift was crucial, not just for its content but for its timing and the reaction it would provoke. I considered what would resonate most with my sister, what would trigger a visceral response in the midst of celebration. Every detail mattered, from the way the gift would be presented, to the moment she would open it, to the reactions it would elicit from the surrounding family. The goal was not merely to shock, but to ensure that the act spoke volumes about the oversight of my exclusion and the underestimation of my patience and intelligence. I visualized the moment vividly, imagining her expression shifting from curiosity to confusion, to disbelief, and ultimately to astonishment. I thought about the murmurs of the guests, the subtle shifts in attention, and the way my absence would suddenly become the center of focus. The planning process itself was empowering, transforming feelings of helplessness into a sense of control. Every layer of the strategy was designed to maximize the impact of my unseen presence, turning a forced absence into an instrument of revelation. In those hours and days of careful preparation, I realized that sometimes the most powerful statements are made not through direct engagement, but through the meticulous orchestration of expectation, timing, and surprise. The patience, observation, and insight cultivated through years of being overlooked had prepared me perfectly for this moment, and I knew that when the time came, the effect would be unforgettable, a quiet triumph masked as a simple gift. As the wedding day approached, the tension and anticipation grew inside me. Every detail of the upcoming event became a mental map for how my absence could be transformed into an unforgettable presence. I watched the preparations from a distance, noting who would be present, how the seating arrangements were planned, and the ways in which attention would be distributed among the guests. The challenge was to make an impact without being physically there, to insert myself into the narrative in a way that could not be ignored. I reflected on the psychological power of surprise and timing, understanding that the most profound moments often come when people least expect them. The gift, which initially seemed like a simple token, became a symbol of both defiance and clever strategy. I meticulously considered what it should contain, knowing that its content would carry layers of meaning far beyond its appearance. It needed to provoke astonishment, disbelief, and an undeniable acknowledgement of my presence and thoughtfulness. The act of planning the gift was more than just creating a shocking moment. It was about sending a message that my exclusion could not erase me, that even absence could speak volumes. I imagined how my sister would approach the moment of opening it, unaware of the significance hidden within. I thought about her initial curiosity, the unfolding realization, and the cascade of emotions that would ripple through the room. Every guest's reaction, every gasp or murmur, would amplify the effect, turning what was intended as a slight against me into a dramatic reversal. The beauty of this plan lay in its subtlety. No one could accuse me of overstepping boundaries, yet everyone would recognize the statement it made. It became clear that the absence itself heightened the impact, creating suspense and drawing focus to the precise moment the gift was unveiled. I also reflected on how my patience and observation over the years had prepared me for this opportunity. Being overlooked had allowed me to see patterns, to understand how emotions and expectations could be manipulated without direct confrontation. The unfolding scenario was not just about revenge, it was about asserting intelligence, creativity, and a presence that had been long underestimated. By turning exclusion into the stage for a calculated revelation, I realized that power could be wielded quietly but effectively. Each imagined reaction strengthened my resolve and sharpened my focus, as the wedding day loomed closer and the moment of impact drew nearer, promising a dramatic and unforgettable turn of events that would leave an indelible mark on everyone in the room. The moment of anticipation reached its peak as the wedding day finally arrived, and with it, the culmination of weeks of careful planning. Even though I was barred from attending, I felt a strange sense of empowerment because I knew that my strategy was set in motion and that the impact I sought was inevitable. Observing the event from a distance, every detail seemed amplified. The laughter, the greetings, the floral arrangements, the meticulous choreography of a day designed to celebrate union and happiness. While the family moved through their routines, completely unaware of the storm about to be unleashed, I held the secret knowledge that my absence would not equate to irrelevance. The gift, which had been carefully prepared and concealed, carried a weight far beyond its physical presence. It was not merely a token of celebration, it was a carefully crafted instrument of revelation. I had chosen it with precision, ensuring that it would draw attention immediately, provoke an emotional reaction, and subtly underscore the years of being overlooked. The anticipation of the reveal created an intense inner focus, each passing minute sharpening my awareness of timing, placement, and audience. I imagined the exact sequence, the gift being handed over, the ribbon being untied, the wrapping being peeled back, and the slow dawning comprehension on my sister's face. Her confusion, hesitation, and ultimate astonishment would be mirrored by the reactions of the surrounding guests, amplifying the effect far beyond what a single act could normally achieve. The brilliance of this moment lay in its orchestration. I did not need to appear physically to command attention, because absence had already created suspense, curiosity, and expectation. Each family member's peripheral awareness contributed to the crescendo of focus on the gift. I thought about how this indirect presence would not only challenge their assumptions but also rewrite the narrative of who mattered and who could make an impact. My meticulous planning transformed feelings of exclusion into a source of control, turning a situation designed to marginalize me into a stage for influence. The emotional satisfaction did not come from malice but from the realization that my patience, observation, and insight had allowed me to craft a moment of undeniable significance. Every step of the process, the preparation, the timing, the subtle manipulation of attention, demonstrated that even in absence, one could assert identity, command focus, and deliver a statement that could not be ignored, leaving a mark that would resonate long after the wedding had ended. As the moment of the gift's unveiling approached, a mix of anticipation and adrenaline coursed through me. Every detail I had considered over the past weeks, the timing, the presentation, the hidden message within the gift, was about to collide in a single explosive instant. I had learned over the years that the most effective statements are not shouted, they are quietly, deliberately placed where they will cause the greatest stir. The gift was more than an object. It was a carefully constructed narrative, a symbol of patience, observation, and intelligence that had been cultivated during years of being underestimated. I imagined the room buzzing with chatter, the soft hum of conversation punctuated by laughter and clinking glasses, and yet, at the center of it all, the focus would shift abruptly to a single point: my carefully placed creation. The beauty of my plan lay in the fact that it did not rely on my physical presence. Being banned had created a void, a space that was filled with curiosity and expectation, and that void would now magnify the impact of my carefully orchestrated act. I thought about my sister's initial curiosity as she picked up the gift, the slow unraveling of confusion as she peeled back layers of wrapping, and the sudden recognition of what the gift truly represented. Her reaction would ripple through the room, sparking murmurs, raised eyebrows, and the undeniable acknowledgement that I had inserted myself into the day in a way no one could ignore. The careful layering of surprise and revelation meant that the effect would not be fleeting, it would linger, coloring the memory of the wedding with a shock that no one had anticipated. I also reflected on the psychological satisfaction that comes from turning exclusion into influence, from transforming a punishment into a stage for assertion. Years of being overlooked had taught me to study patterns, to anticipate reactions, and to manipulate the timing of events for maximum effect. The gift became a conduit for all those lessons, a way to convert frustration into strategy, invisibility into presence, and absence into authority. In those moments, I realized that control does not always require proximity. Sometimes the quietest, most meticulously executed actions carry the heaviest weight. As I waited, imagining the unfolding scene, I felt the culmination of preparation, patience, and insight converge in a single, unforgettable moment that would shift perceptions, command attention, and leave an indelible mark on everyone present without me ever stepping into the spotlight myself. The moment had arrived when the true power of absence became evident, as my sister finally reached for the gift that had been quietly waiting for her all along. From the moment it was handed over, I knew the subtle tension in the room would soon become palpable. Everyone present assumed that my exclusion from the wedding meant my influence would be negligible, that my role in the day's events was over before it had begun. Yet, the entire dynamic of the room was about to change with a single unexpected act. I had observed for years how attention flowed during gatherings, how moments of surprise and novelty captured focus, and now all that insight was poised to manifest. The gift, carefully wrapped and unassuming on the outside, carried within it layers of meaning that would resonate far beyond its physical form. I imagined the initial curiosity on my sister's face as she carefully unwrapped it, the fleeting hesitation as she processed the ordinary appearance, and then the dawning realization of what it truly represented. The shock that would follow was not merely from the object itself but from the quiet assertion it embodied, a statement that I could be powerful, impactful, and unforgettable even when intentionally sidelined. As the layers of wrapping fell away, gasps and murmurs began to ripple through the guests, each reaction amplifying the intensity of the moment. The attention that had been denied to me through exclusion now converged on the revelation that I had orchestrated, and the room's collective focus became a testament to the effectiveness of strategic patience. This carefully staged moment demonstrated that influence is not always derived from direct presence or verbal assertion. Sometimes it is the precise calibration of timing, context, and surprise that allows one's impact to resonate most strongly. I had learned that being underestimated is an advantage when combined with observation, planning, and insight. In that instant, the gift became more than a simple object. It became a symbol of the patience and intelligence honed over years of being overlooked. I pictured the shift in expressions around the room, the astonishment, the disbelief, and the subtle acknowledgement of my presence through absence. What had been intended as a marginalization was transformed into a moment of undeniable influence. Each reaction reinforced the lesson that carefully considered actions, delivered at the perfect moment, carry far more weight than impulsive demonstrations, and that sometimes the most lasting impact comes not from appearing in the spotlight, but from orchestrating the moment in a way that leaves everyone else caught in the reverberations of surprise, recognition, and awe. As the gift was finally opened, the atmosphere in the room shifted in a way that could be felt almost immediately. The casual chatter, the laughter, and the background noise of celebration all seemed to pause for a moment, drawn into the gravity of what was unfolding. I had meticulously crafted the contents of the gift to elicit a reaction that would be impossible to ignore, and now I watched in my mind's eye as that plan came to life. My sister's initial expression of curiosity quickly shifted to confusion as she uncovered the first layers, and the room around her began to ripple with quiet gasps, murmurs, and the subtle widening of eyes. Each second that passed intensified the focus on her, on the gift, and by extension, on the statement I had orchestrated without ever being physically present. The beauty of the situation lay in the way absence magnified presence. My exclusion had created a vacuum, a space that the gift now filled with undeniable impact. I had learned over years of being overlooked that the element of surprise, when combined with timing and strategic placement, carries a weight far heavier than any direct confrontation could achieve. The reactions around the room reflected this lesson perfectly. Guests instinctively leaned forward, craning to see, to understand, to witness the moment of revelation. Their collective attention transformed the act from a simple opening of a package into a shared experience of astonishment, disbelief, and subtle admiration for the cleverness behind it. I had designed it so that the unfolding realization would be gradual, allowing each layer to build suspense, amplify curiosity, and heighten the emotional payoff. The careful orchestration ensured that the impact would not be fleeting, it would linger, leaving a lasting impression in the minds of everyone present. It became clear that influence and acknowledgement do not always require physical presence. Even from a distance, the ability to plan, observe, and understand human reactions can allow someone to insert themselves into a narrative in a way that is impossible to ignore. The gift was not simply a token of celebration. It was a carefully constructed instrument of subtle power, a testament to patience, intelligence, and the understanding that timing can turn exclusion into an opportunity. In that moment, I realized that the emotions, gasps, and astonishment in the room were more than reactions to the object itself. They were the acknowledgement of years of oversight, a recognition that even the quietest, most underestimated presence can create a ripple that changes the entire dynamic of a room, turning absence into one of the loudest statements anyone could witness. As the shock of the gift's revelation rippled through the room, the reactions of everyone present became a mirror reflecting the full impact of what had been carefully orchestrated. The whispers, the sudden gasps, and the instinctive turning of heads all contributed to a wave of attention that seemed to center on the gift and, by extension, on the subtle presence I had engineered. It was astonishing to witness, even from afar, how a single act could command the focus of so many people, transforming a moment that was intended to marginalize me into one of undeniable influence. Every expression, from confusion to disbelief, from curiosity to astonishment, served as confirmation that the careful planning, patience, and observation I had invested over the years were paying off. The unfolding drama revealed more than just surprise, it revealed a shift in perception. The family members who had assumed my exclusion meant irrelevance were suddenly confronted with evidence of strategy, intelligence, and creativity that they had underestimated. This was the power of indirect action, the ability to assert presence and command recognition without ever stepping into the space physically. The careful layering of suspense, timing, and subtle psychological pressure had created a situation where absence amplified impact rather than diminished it. I could envision my sister's reaction changing in real time, initial curiosity giving way to hesitation, followed by realization, then a mixture of shock and disbelief as the true significance of the gift registered. The surrounding guests were equally caught in the moment, their murmurs and glances amplifying the effect and creating a ripple that extended well beyond the immediate scene. The power of this approach lay in its subtlety. There was no overt confrontation, no loud declaration, and yet the message could not have been more clear. Even when overlooked, underestimated, or excluded, influence could be asserted thoughtfully, strategically, and memorably. I had taken what was intended as a slight against me and turned it into a platform for acknowledgement, transforming the rules of the situation into tools that worked in my favor. The careful orchestration of reactions, the anticipation of emotional responses, and the deliberate construction of a scenario designed to highlight my unseen efforts all demonstrated that sometimes the most profound statements are made quietly, indirectly, and with perfect timing. As the moments unfolded, it became clear that the lesson extended beyond the immediate shock of the gift. The ability to observe, plan, and act with insight can create a presence and authority that commands recognition, turning absence into one of the most powerful forms of influence imaginable. As the gift's revelation continued to unfold, I began to fully appreciate the psychological impact of absence and anticipation working together. Being physically barred from the wedding had initially felt like a loss, a source of frustration and helplessness, but now it became apparent that this very absence had created an extraordinary opportunity. The lack of my physical presence meant that every eye, Every whispered comment and every reaction was magnified, all focused on the single act I had meticulously prepared. The strategic timing of the gift's unveiling allowed the moment to gain momentum naturally. As curiosity turned into confusion, confusion turned into realization, and realization shifted into astonishment. Each layer of the gift had been planned to escalate the emotional response. And now, as the final revelation emerged, the collective attention of the room was fully captured. The subtle power of indirect influence was evident in every glance, every shifting posture, and every hushed whisper. Family members who had assumed that excluding me would diminish my presence were confronted instead with the undeniable truth that exclusion had only intensified the impact. I had transformed what was intended as marginalization into a stage for assertion, demonstrating that patience, observation, and strategic thinking could wield far more power than direct confrontation. The unfolding scene reinforced the idea that influence does not require physical proximity, it requires understanding, timing, and the ability to anticipate human reaction. I had carefully studied the dynamics of attention, how moments of surprise can dominate a room, and how curiosity can build suspense, and now all that insight was playing out perfectly. My sister's reaction was the centerpiece of this drama. Initial confusion gave way to hesitation, followed by a wave of astonishment, all while the surrounding guests absorbed the unfolding scene, amplifying the impact through their shared experience. The gift itself, unassuming yet layered with significance, became a conduit for my presence, my intelligence, and the years of careful observation that had prepared me for this moment. Each reaction, each gasp, each subtle expression contributed to a crescendo of acknowledgement that no direct action could have achieved. The realization grew that carefully orchestrated indirect action can create resonance far greater than any overt gesture. By transforming exclusion into a vehicle for strategic influence, I had created a moment that demanded attention, commanded recognition, and left a lasting impression. The lesson was clear. Sometimes the quietest, most patient, and well-planned moves carry the greatest weight, turning absence into a tool for impact that no one can ignore, and a statement that lingers long after the moment has passed. As the gift continued to capture the attention of everyone in the room, I realized that the power of careful observation and preparation was unfolding exactly as I had imagined. Over the years, being overlooked had taught me to notice the small details that others missed. The subtle shifts in expressions, the fleeting glances, and the unspoken assumptions that guided behavior. All of this knowledge now coalesced into a single moment, allowing me to command focus without ever physically stepping into the space. Each family member's reaction was layered and complex. Some were genuinely astonished, others whispered to each other, trying to process the unexpected revelation, and yet all attention was centered on the gift and, by extension, the presence I had orchestrated. The art of timing became evident as the seconds passed, each unfolding action creating a crescendo of surprise and acknowledgement. The way the wrapping was peeled back, the way the contents were revealed, and the subtle hints embedded in the presentation, all contributed to a narrative that was impossible to ignore. I had learned that indirect influence often carries more weight than direct confrontation, because it allows observers to reach their own conclusions, heightening the emotional and psychological impact. As the reactions continued, I could sense a shift in the room's energy. What was intended as a family celebration moment had transformed into a stage for recognition and reevaluation. The subtle brilliance of the plan was that it did not seek revenge in the traditional sense. It was not about shaming or humiliating anyone, but rather about asserting presence and intelligence in a way that demanded attention. Each layer of the gift symbolized years of careful observation, patience, and strategic thinking, turning what could have been a moment of frustration and exclusion into a demonstration of influence and control. I imagined how my sister processed the unfolding revelation, her emotions shifting from curiosity to confusion to astonishment, all while the surrounding guests absorbed the magnitude of what was happening. Their collective reaction amplified the moment, reinforcing the power of indirect action. The gift became more than a token. It was a carefully constructed statement about recognition, patience, and the ability to transform absence into impact. In those moments, I fully understood that influence is often most potent when it is subtle, unexpected, and strategically executed. Years of being overlooked had prepared me to seize this opportunity, and the unfolding scene demonstrated how calculated timing, insight, and creativity could turn a moment of marginalization into a powerful, unforgettable statement that resonated throughout the room. As the unfolding scene continued to captivate everyone in the room, it became clear how meticulously planned timing and subtlety could transform a simple object into a moment of undeniable influence. The gift I had prepared was no longer just an item to be opened, it had become a focal point of attention, a catalyst that commanded the room's energy and shifted perceptions in ways that mere physical presence could not achieve. Every layer, every detail, and every moment of hesitation was deliberate, designed to maximize curiosity and suspense. I had spent time envisioning exactly how the opening would progress, the initial curiosity, the slight hesitation, the slow realization, and finally the cascade of astonishment that would ripple outward from my sister to every guest present. The reactions of those around her were the amplification of the impact, and I could see, even from afar, how each expression contributed to the overall resonance of the moment. What had begun as a frustrating exclusion was now a stage for influence, demonstrating that absence does not equate to irrelevance and that carefully orchestrated indirect action can carry more weight than overt gestures. Years of being overlooked had taught me to notice nuances, to study patterns of attention, and to anticipate emotional responses, all of which were coming to fruition in this pivotal moment. The subtlety of the act ensured that no one could claim it was overstepping bounds, yet everyone could see the intelligence and planning behind it. The gift became a vehicle not only for astonishment but also for acknowledgement, an acknowledgement of patience, creativity, and the quiet strength that had been underestimated for so long. Each second of hesitation, each gasp, each whispered comment contributed to a crescendo that reinforced the central idea. Influence is as much about strategy and insight as it is about visibility. I imagined the internal processing happening in my sister's mind, the gradual realization of the layers of meaning embedded in the gift, and how that would forever alter her perception of the day and my role in it. The surrounding guests became inadvertent participants in the unfolding drama, their attention and reactions amplifying the intended effect. This moment demonstrated a critical lesson. Carefully observed patterns, precise timing, and subtle yet powerful execution can turn situations designed to marginalize into opportunities to assert presence and command respect. By converting absence into an instrument of impact, I had not only altered the course of the event but also created a lasting impression that would linger in the memories of everyone present, proving that patience, insight, and deliberate action can wield influence in ways that are both subtle and extraordinary. As the unfolding scene continued to captivate everyone in the room, it became clear how meticulously planned timing and subtlety could transform a simple object into a moment of undeniable influence. The gift I had prepared was no longer just an item to be opened, it had become a focal point of attention, a catalyst that commanded the room's energy and shifted perceptions in ways that mere physical presence could not achieve. Every layer, every detail, and every moment of hesitation was deliberate, designed to maximize curiosity and suspense. I had spent time envisioning exactly how the opening would progress, the initial curiosity, the slight hesitation, the slow realization, and finally the cascade of astonishment that would ripple outward from my sister to every guest present. The reactions of those around her were the amplification of the impact, and I could see, even from afar, how each expression contributed to the overall resonance of the moment. What had begun as a frustrating exclusion was now a stage for influence, demonstrating that absence does not equate to irrelevance, and that carefully orchestrated indirect action can carry more weight than overt gestures. Years of being overlooked had taught me to notice nuances, to study patterns of attention, and to anticipate emotional responses, all of which were coming to fruition in this pivotal moment. The subtlety of the act ensured that no one could claim it was overstepping bounds, yet everyone could see the intelligence and planning behind it. The gift became a vehicle not only for astonishment but also for acknowledgement, an acknowledgement of patience, creativity, and the quiet strength that had been underestimated for so long. Each second of hesitation, each gasp, each whispered comment contributed to a crescendo that reinforced the central idea: influence is as much about strategy and insight as it is about visibility. I imagined the internal processing happening in my sister's mind, the gradual realization of the layers of meaning embedded in the gift, and how that would forever alter her perception of the day and my role in it. The surrounding guests became inadvertent participants in the unfolding drama, their attention and reactions amplifying the intended effect. This moment demonstrated a critical lesson. Carefully observed patterns, precise timing, and subtle yet powerful execution can turn situations designed to marginalize into opportunities to assert presence and command respect. By converting absence into an instrument of impact, I had not only altered the course of the event, but also created a lasting impression that would linger in the memories of everyone present, proving that patience, insight, and deliberate action can wield influence in ways that are both subtle and extraordinary. As the layers of the gift were finally revealed, the room became charged with a tension that was both thrilling and undeniable. Every guest, previously engaged in casual conversation or quietly observing, now turned their focus to the unfolding moment, completely absorbed in the scene I had orchestrated. I had spent countless hours considering how the reactions would unfold, understanding that attention is often drawn more powerfully by absence than by presence, and that the anticipation created by not being physically there could be a tool for influence. The gift itself had been carefully designed to provoke curiosity first, confusion next, and finally astonishment, ensuring that each step built upon the last to create a crescendo of emotional impact. My sister's initial hesitancy as she unwrapped the layers, the fleeting glance of bewilderment that crossed her face, and the subtle shift in body language all contributed to the growing intensity. I could visualize the guests instinctively leaning forward, murmuring to one another, trying to understand the significance of what was being revealed, and how their collective attention only amplified the effect. The brilliance of the moment lay in its subtlety. No one could accuse me of overstepping boundaries or acting with malice, yet everyone recognized the intelligence, patience, and planning that had gone into it. This was not about revenge in the traditional sense, but about asserting presence in a way that commanded recognition without confrontation. The gift became a symbol of the careful observation, patience, and strategic thinking that had been honed over years of being underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. As the revelation continued, I imagined my sister's internal reaction shifting from curiosity to confusion, and ultimately to astonishment, while the surrounding family absorbed every detail, their collective surprise magnifying the effect. Each gasp, each widened eye, each whispered comment reinforced the power of indirect influence, demonstrating that one could assert control and demand acknowledgement even in physical absence. The moment highlighted the psychological impact of timing, presentation, and subtle manipulation of expectations, showing that the most potent statements often come from patience and foresight, rather than impulsive action. I had taken what was intended to marginalize me and turned it into an instrument of influence, proving that strategy, observation, and careful execution can create moments that leave an indelible mark. The unfolding scene became a testament to the effectiveness of subtlety, the power of indirect presence, and the undeniable reality that well-orchestrated actions can transform exclusion into one of the most impactful forms of acknowledgement possible. As the gift continued to dominate the attention of the room, it became clear just how powerful a carefully planned act could be when combined with the element of absence. Everyone present had been accustomed to a certain narrative, that my exclusion from the wedding meant I would have no influence, that my role in the day was effectively over before it began. Yet, the unfolding moment challenged that assumption completely. I had designed the gift not only to surprise but to assert presence in a subtle yet undeniable way, transforming a situation meant to marginalize me into one where I held control over the focus and energy of the room. The way my sister handled the gift, from initial curiosity to cautious hesitation, created a natural arc that heightened suspense. Each layer revealed was deliberate, meant to build tension and amplify the emotional payoff. I had spent considerable time analyzing how human reactions unfold in such moments, knowing that curiosity can escalate quickly into astonishment and that collective attention can magnify impact exponentially. As each second passed, whispers and murmurs began to ripple through the guests, drawing their attention even more fully to the unfolding revelation. The gift became a magnet for focus, transforming the energy of the room and shifting perceptions of my role within the family. The brilliance of the act lay in its indirectness. I did not need to speak, to confront, or to argue for acknowledgement. My absence, combined with meticulous planning, created anticipation and suspense that made the eventual impact far more profound than any direct action could have achieved. Every reaction, the widening of eyes, the slight intake of breath, the subtle gestures of disbelief, reinforced the careful orchestration behind the moment. The unfolding scene also demonstrated the power of patience and insight cultivated over years of being underestimated. I had observed patterns, studied behavior, and anticipated responses so that this single act would achieve maximum effect. The gift, seemingly ordinary on the surface, carried layers of significance that allowed me to assert presence, intelligence, and influence without physically being there. In that moment, I realized the extent to which subtle, deliberate action can command recognition, transform perception, and leave a lasting impression. What had been intended as a punitive exclusion became instead a stage for strategic assertion, proving that thoughtful planning, timing, and an understanding of human psychology can convert absence into one of the most powerful forms of presence imaginable, leaving a mark on everyone in the room that could not be ignored or forgotten. As the unfolding reactions in the room intensified, I began to fully grasp the depth of impact that a single well-planned act could have when combined with the strategic power of absence. My exclusion from the wedding, which had initially felt like a sharp and unfair punishment, had inadvertently set the stage for a dramatic revelation that no one could have anticipated. Every glance, every whisper, every subtle shift in body language contributed to the escalating tension, drawing the collective attention of the family and guests toward the focal point I had carefully orchestrated. I had designed the gift not merely to surprise but to create a cascade of emotional responses that would command acknowledgement without my physical presence. The unfolding moment highlighted the intricate interplay between anticipation, timing, and human psychology. My sister's curiosity, her cautious handling of the gift, and the gradual uncovering of its contents created a natural progression of suspense that captured everyone's focus. Each layer revealed built on the last, intensifying astonishment and amplifying the emotional resonance of the act. From the outside, it might have appeared simple, even innocent, but the precision behind the orchestration was deliberate and calculated. I had spent years observing patterns of attention, reactions, and family dynamics, understanding how subtle actions could carry far more weight than overt gestures or confrontations. The absence that was meant to diminish me, instead, magnified my influence, as the anticipation created by my non-appearance heightened curiosity and focus. The room, once filled with casual chatter and background noise, now seemed suspended, collectively caught in a moment of revelation that centered on my carefully crafted gift. The astonishment and murmurs that spread through the guests served as confirmation that indirect influence can surpass direct presence when executed with insight and strategy. I imagined the internal processing occurring in my sister's mind, the shift from curiosity to hesitation, confusion, and finally awe, as the full meaning of the gift sank in. Each reaction around her amplified the impact, reinforcing the idea that influence is not measured by proximity, but by the ability to manipulate timing, perception, and expectation. This carefully orchestrated moment became a powerful lesson in patience, observation, and strategic execution. The gift itself evolved into a symbol of recognition, intelligence, and subtle authority, proving that even when overlooked, underestimated, or excluded, one can assert presence, command attention, and create a lasting impression that resonates far beyond the immediate moment. As the intensity of the room grew, it became evident how absence, when combined with careful planning, could amplify influence in ways that presence alone could not achieve. Being banned from attending the wedding had initially felt like a harsh judgment, a moment of exclusion designed to minimize my importance. Yet, in retrospect, it had provided the perfect opportunity to orchestrate a revelation that would leave a lasting mark on everyone present. The gift, meticulously prepared and layered with meaning, became the conduit for this assertion of presence. Each detail, from the choice of wrapping to the timing of its presentation, was carefully calculated to maximize suspense and ensure that attention would focus on the moment of unveiling. I had learned over the years that subtlety and patience often create the most profound effects, and this was the culmination of all those lessons. The room, previously filled with casual chatter and background energy, gradually fell into a collective focus as my sister handled the gift, unaware of the significance hidden within. Her initial curiosity, Her careful manipulation of the wrapping and the momentary hesitation all heightened the suspense, drawing the surrounding guests into a shared experience of anticipation. I could imagine the ripple of attention as each layer was revealed, murmurs spreading, eyes widening, and expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief to astonishment. The reactions were amplified by the very absence that had been intended to diminish me. The lack of physical presence created a vacuum that made the impact of the gift even more powerful. This demonstrated the subtle power of indirect action. Influence is not solely derived from appearing in the spotlight, but from orchestrating moments where attention is naturally drawn to the intended focus. The careful consideration of timing, presentation, and psychological anticipation ensured that the act would resonate long after the initial astonishment faded. Each reaction, from my sister's growing realization to the guests' murmured observations, served as confirmation that strategy, observation, and insight can command recognition in ways that direct confrontation often cannot. I had effectively transformed exclusion into a platform for influence, demonstrating that patience, meticulous planning, and understanding human behavior can turn what was meant to marginalize into a moment of undeniable presence. The culmination of these elements created a powerful statement about overlooked intelligence, the ability to assert influence indirectly, and the enduring effect that a single, carefully executed act can have on perception and attention within a family dynamic. As the gift's contents were finally revealed, the atmosphere in the room transformed completely, shifting from casual celebration to focused attention, suspense, and astonishment. The subtlety of my approach became fully apparent in that moment, proving that carefully orchestrated indirect action can wield more power than overt confrontation. I had spent weeks anticipating the reactions, visualizing every detail, the way my sister would approach the gift, her initial curiosity, the slight hesitation as she began unwrapping it, and the growing awareness of what lay hidden inside. Each of these moments was critical to maximizing the emotional and psychological impact of the reveal. My absence, initially perceived as a disadvantage, had actually amplified the tension, creating a void that made my presence, through the gift, impossible to ignore. Guests instinctively leaned in, whispered to one another, and exchanged glances as they collectively processed the unfolding scene, their attention fully captured by the mystery and the surprise. The reactions around the room, expressions of confusion, astonishment, and disbelief, served as confirmation that patience, insight, and careful planning could command recognition in ways direct action could not. I had intentionally designed the gift to escalate in impact gradually, ensuring that each layer of surprise built upon the previous, creating a crescendo of emotional resonance that centered on my carefully planned act. The unfolding drama demonstrated the effectiveness of understanding human psychology, timing, and perception. Every subtle gesture, every gasp, and every widening eye reinforced the influence I had created without ever stepping into the spotlight. My sister's shifting expression, from curiosity to hesitation, and ultimately to astonishment, mirrored the growing realization that this was more than a mere gift. It was a carefully orchestrated statement of presence, intelligence, and patience. The surrounding family members became unwitting participants in the drama, amplifying the effect through their shared reactions, their whispers, and their stunned silence. This moment illustrated the immense power of absence when combined with strategy and insight, showing that influence does not necessarily require proximity, volume, or confrontation. By leveraging timing, anticipation, and subtle psychological cues, I had transformed what was meant to marginalize me into an unforgettable assertion of presence, leaving an indelible impression on everyone in the room. The realization that careful planning and observation could turn exclusion into a moment of undeniable influence became the defining lesson of this entire experience, highlighting the value of patience, foresight, and the strategic use of subtlety to command attention. As the room absorbed the initial shock of the gift, the power of anticipation and carefully orchestrated suspense became undeniable. I had learned long ago that exclusion could be turned into an advantage, and now that lesson played out in real time. The absence that had once felt like a punishment had created a space where curiosity, expectation, and tension could accumulate, making the eventual reveal far more impactful than if I had simply been present. Every detail of the gift's presentation, the wrapping, the placement, and even the subtle hints of intrigue I had embedded, had been meticulously planned to ensure that the focus of the room would converge on the moment of discovery. My sister's handling of the gift provided the perfect stage for the reactions I had anticipated. Her initial hesitation, her fleeting expressions of confusion, and the slow dawning of realization all contributed to the emotional crescendo, and each subtle cue from her movements triggered a ripple effect among the surrounding guests. Murmurs, gasps, and widened eyes amplified the impact, creating a collective experience of astonishment that extended far beyond the immediate recipient. I had carefully calibrated the layers of surprise to unfold gradually, knowing that suspense magnifies the emotional response and that the power of indirect influence is often stronger than direct confrontation. The unfolding reactions of the family reinforced a critical insight. Influence is not measured by physical presence, but by the ability to manipulate timing, attention, and expectation. Every subtle gesture, the gasp, the whispered comment, the instinctive leaning forward, worked to reinforce the statement I was making without a single word being spoken. This moment became a lesson in patience, observation, and strategic execution, highlighting how years of being underestimated could be converted into insight and advantage. I imagined my sister processing the scene internally, shifting from curiosity to hesitation, to bewilderment, and finally to astonishment as the layers of meaning revealed themselves. The surrounding guests, drawn into the moment, became extensions of the impact, their collective awareness amplifying the significance of the act. What had been intended as a marginalization became a demonstration of control, intelligence, and influence, proving that subtlety and timing often achieve far greater resonance than overt gestures. The carefully orchestrated unfolding of the gift's revelation not only asserted presence, but also redefined perceptions, turning absence into a conduit for attention and respect, leaving a lasting impression that would linger long after the wedding festivities had concluded. As the reactions in the room continued to unfold, the full magnitude of the carefully orchestrated moment became evident. The gift, which I had designed with precision and layered intention, had shifted the energy of the entire event. What had been intended as a punitive exclusion had instead become a stage for influence, demonstrating the power of patience, observation, and strategic planning. Every guest, drawn into the scene by curiosity and the element of surprise, played a part in amplifying the impact of the reveal. Their murmurs, subtle gestures, and widened eyes reflected the growing realization that this was no ordinary gift, and that its presence carried a statement far greater than its physical form suggested. My sister's response was at the center of this emotional crescendo. Initial curiosity gave way to hesitation, then confusion, and finally astonishment as she pieced together the significance embedded within the gift. The unfolding of her reactions was like watching a carefully directed performance, with every small movement contributing to the cumulative effect. I had learned over the years that influence is often more powerful when executed indirectly, and this moment illustrated that truth perfectly. Absence had created a vacuum of expectation, and the reveal of the gift filled that space with attention, emotion, and undeniable recognition. The brilliance of the plan lay not only in its surprise but also in its subtlety. No one could accuse me of overstepping, yet everyone recognized the intelligence, patience, and insight that had gone into the act. Each layer of the gift, each incremental revelation, heightened the suspense and drew focus more acutely, ensuring that the moment would linger in memory long after the initial shock. The collective reactions of the guests, combined with my sister's astonishment, created a dynamic in which the true power of the moment became clear. Influence does not require physical presence when timing, observation, and psychological insight are applied effectively. I had transformed what was meant to marginalize me into a demonstration of control, presence, and strategic thinking. The experience underscored a broader lesson about human perception and attention. Carefully executed indirect action can command focus, shape narratives, and create resonance that direct confrontation often cannot achieve. Each subtle cue, gasp, and exchange between the guests reinforced the impact, proving that patience and foresight are among the most powerful tools one can possess. In that unfolding scene, the gift became more than a surprise. It became a symbol of recognition, intelligence, and influence, a lasting reminder that absence can be wielded as power, and that carefully orchestrated actions leave impressions that endure far longer than impulsive or overt gestures ever could. As the ripple of astonishment spread through the room, the subtle power of absence became strikingly evident. The very act that had been intended to exclude me now served as a platform for influence, transforming a situation designed to diminish into one that amplified my presence in a way no direct confrontation could have achieved. Each detail of the gift, every layer carefully planned and intentionally ambiguous, played a role in building suspense and drawing focus. I had anticipated the emotional arc perfectly, curiosity leading to hesitation, hesitation giving way to confusion, and finally, the dawning realization that the gift was not merely symbolic but a statement of patience, insight, and strategic thinking. The guests, initially engaged in casual observation, gradually became captivated by the unfolding moment, their expressions reflecting a mixture of intrigue, surprise, and admiration. Even subtle gestures, slight tilts of the head, whispered comments, exchanged glances, contributed to a collective awareness that magnified the impact of the act. The power of indirect influence was undeniable. By being absent physically, I had allowed the suspense to accumulate, creating a vacuum of attention that the gift now filled completely. The reactions around the room amplified the intended effect, turning the simple act of opening a present into a shared experience of astonishment and acknowledgement. My sister's evolving expression was at the center of this dynamic, moving from curiosity to confusion, and then to an almost tangible realization of the significance embedded within the gift. Each increment of surprise, each layer peeled back, was designed to escalate the emotional response, ensuring that the revelation would leave a lasting impression. Over the years, I had learned to read patterns of attention and behavior, to understand how subtle timing and expectation could be leveraged to command focus without confrontation. This moment was the culmination of that insight, a demonstration that strategy, patience, and observation can assert influence more effectively than overt presence. The unfolding reactions made it clear that the audience, the family and guests, had become part of the statement itself, their astonishment amplifying the significance of the act. By transforming exclusion into a stage for indirect assertion, I had created a powerful lesson. Influence is as much about timing, perception, and subtlety as it is about action. The gift became more than a token. It symbolized recognition, intelligence, and the enduring ability to command attention, proving that absence, when carefully orchestrated, can wield some of the loudest forms of presence imaginable. As the gift continued to hold the room's attention, I began to fully understand the subtle yet profound power of absence and patience combined. The exclusion from the wedding, which had initially felt like a cruel punishment, had in fact created an opportunity to assert influence in a way that would have been impossible if I had simply been present. Each detail of the gift, the careful wrapping, the timing of its presentation, and the layers of meaning embedded within, was intentionally designed to capture focus, build suspense, and elicit a reaction that would resonate far beyond the immediate moment. I had long observed how attention flows in social situations, how curiosity and expectation can create a tension that amplifies emotional response, and now I could see those lessons come to life. My sister's reactions, from curiosity to hesitation, and then to growing astonishment, were amplified by the surrounding guests, whose collective attention intensified the impact. Whispers, murmurs, and exchanged glances spread throughout the room, creating a shared experience in which everyone became a part of the unfolding revelation. This moment demonstrated that influence is not solely derived from presence or verbal assertion. It can be achieved more powerfully through strategy, timing, and insight. I had transformed what was intended to marginalize me into a stage for recognition, demonstrating that patience and careful planning can assert presence more forcefully than impulsive actions or direct confrontation. The unfolding reactions highlighted the psychological weight of expectation, showing that when anticipation is skillfully managed, the payoff can create a lasting impression. Every subtle cue, from a gasp to a widened eye, contributed to the crescendo of attention, reinforcing the intended message. Even when overlooked or underestimated, one can command acknowledgement and respect through carefully orchestrated acts. I imagined my sister processing the moment internally, moving from surprise to a dawning comprehension of the significance behind the gift, while the surrounding guests reflected astonishment and curiosity. The experience underscored the power of indirect influence and strategic foresight, proving that absence can be leveraged as a tool to create resonance that direct presence often cannot achieve. In orchestrating this moment, I had turned a situation designed to belittle or exclude into one of undeniable authority and impact, showing that intelligence, patience, and calculated action can transform marginalization into a profound, unforgettable statement that lingers in perception long after the event has passed. As the unfolding scene reached its peak, the full significance of my strategic planning became undeniable. The gift I had meticulously prepared had not merely captured attention, it had transformed the entire atmosphere of the wedding into a stage for influence and recognition. What had initially seemed like a harsh exclusion had evolved into an advantage, providing the perfect framework for a carefully orchestrated moment that commanded focus without my physical presence. Every aspect of the gift, the design, the timing, and the layered significance embedded within, was intentionally crafted to create a psychological impact that would resonate deeply. I had spent considerable time analyzing how people react to surprise, anticipation, and the unexpected, understanding that indirect action often carries more weight than direct confrontation. As my sister began to unwrap the gift, the subtle shifts in her expressions, from curiosity to confusion and finally to astonishment, set off a chain reaction throughout the room. The guests, initially observing with casual attention, were drawn into the moment, their murmurs, gasps, and shared glances amplifying the effect. The power of absence became increasingly apparent. Being excluded had created a vacuum of expectation, a tension that the gift now filled with undeniable force. Each layer revealed heightened the emotional and psychological response, ensuring that the impact would linger long after the initial shock. I had learned over the years to anticipate reactions, to study the flow of attention in social settings, and to understand how carefully managed suspense can maximize influence. The moment underscored a critical insight. Visibility is not always necessary to command acknowledgement. Instead, subtlety, timing, and strategic foresight can assert presence in ways that are both profound and unforgettable. The collective astonishment in the room validated the thought and effort I had invested in crafting the gift and its reveal. My sister's dawning comprehension of the meaning behind the gift, combined with the guests' reactions, reinforced the effectiveness of indirect influence and demonstrated the power of turning exclusion into an opportunity for assertion. The act became more than a gift. It was a testament to patience, observation, and intelligence, showing that a carefully executed plan can transform marginalization into a moment of undeniable authority and recognition. This experience highlighted how strategic preparation, understanding human behavior, and leveraging absence can create a lasting impact, leaving a memory that is difficult to ignore and impossible to forget. As the layers of the gift were finally exposed, the room became a theater of astonishment, curiosity, and realization, and it was in that moment that the true power of careful planning and strategic patience became evident. The gift, seemingly ordinary at first glance, carried a weight far beyond its physical presence, transforming what had been intended as a punishment, my exclusion from the wedding, into a stage for influence and acknowledgement. Every aspect of the presentation had been meticulously considered: the wrapping, the timing, the subtle hints of intrigue that drew attention, and the way each layer revealed itself gradually to maximize suspense and emotional response. I had spent years observing human behavior in social settings, studying patterns of attention, and noting how curiosity and expectation can heighten perception. This insight guided the orchestration of the moment, ensuring that every reaction, from my sister's initial hesitation to her growing astonishment, and from the murmurs of guests to the widening of eyes around the room, amplified the impact of the act. The absence that had initially felt like a limitation had instead become a tool, creating a vacuum of expectation that heightened the effect of the reveal. By not being physically present, I allowed suspense and anticipation to accumulate, making the eventual unveiling far more powerful than if I had simply appeared in person. The subtlety of the act meant that no one could accuse me of overstepping boundaries, yet the intelligence, patience, and insight behind the gift were impossible to ignore. Each layer of revelation was carefully designed to escalate curiosity and astonishment, ensuring that the emotional and psychological impact of the moment would endure long after the initial surprise. The reactions of the surrounding guests, their whispered speculations, and the collective focus on the gift reinforced the idea that influence is often most potent when executed indirectly, when timing, perception, and expectation are leveraged strategically. My sister's realization of the deeper significance behind the gift became the centerpiece of this orchestrated moment, highlighting the effectiveness of planning, observation, and subtle manipulation of attention. The unfolding scene demonstrated that exclusion, when combined with patience, foresight, and creativity, can be transformed into an opportunity for assertion and recognition. It underscored a critical truth: carefully executed indirect action can command attention, shift perception, and leave an indelible mark, proving that absence can be a tool for influence and that strategic, thoughtful acts often resonate far longer and more profoundly than direct engagement ever could. As the final layers of the gift were revealed, the room's energy shifted completely, and it became clear just how much influence a carefully orchestrated act could carry, even in the absence of physical presence. The exclusion from the wedding, which at first had felt like an unfair punishment, had unintentionally created the perfect stage for a demonstration of patience, intelligence, and strategic planning. Every element of the gift, the wrapping, the timing, and the subtle clues embedded within, had been meticulously designed to capture attention and provoke a reaction that would ripple through everyone present. I had spent years observing human behavior, noting how curiosity, anticipation, and the unexpected could create powerful emotional responses, and now that insight was being realized in a moment that demanded acknowledgement. My sister's reaction, from initial curiosity to hesitation and then to a profound realization, acted as the focal point for the unfolding drama. Each subtle change in expression, every small gesture, and every gasp amplified the impact, while the surrounding guests, drawn into the scene, became part of the cascading effect. The brilliance of the moment lay in its subtlety. No direct confrontation was necessary, yet the intelligence, patience, and foresight behind the gift were unmistakable. The absence that had initially seemed like a disadvantage had, in fact, magnified the effect, as suspense and curiosity had accumulated, making the ultimate revelation all the more powerful. Each layer of the gift had been designed to escalate anticipation and astonishment, ensuring that the emotional resonance would be both immediate and long-lasting. The collective reactions of the guests reinforced the magnitude of the moment, demonstrating how carefully managed timing and psychological insight can assert presence without the need for verbal assertion or physical engagement. I imagined my sister processing the significance internally, moving from initial surprise to dawning comprehension, while the guests' astonishment and whispers amplified the sense of recognition. The act illustrated the extraordinary potential of indirect influence, exclusion, and marginalization, when combined with strategy, observation, and foresight, can be transformed into a stage for assertion and acknowledgement. The gift became a symbol of intelligence, creativity, and the subtle power of patience, showing that influence does not always require direct engagement. By leveraging timing, expectation, and psychological anticipation, I had turned absence into a tool of authority and impact, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present and demonstrating that a carefully executed indirect act can resonate far more profoundly than any immediate overt gesture. As the final reactions to the gift unfolded, it became strikingly clear how absence, anticipation, and careful orchestration could create a moment of profound impact. The wedding, from which I had been excluded, had initially seemed like a stage denied to me, a space where my presence was deliberately minimized. Yet, in the careful preparation of this gift, I had turned that exclusion into an opportunity for influence and assertion. Every detail, the design, the wrapping, the timing, and the embedded layers of meaning, had been thoughtfully considered to ensure that attention, curiosity, and suspense would accumulate before the final reveal. I had spent years observing human behavior in social and familial contexts, understanding how subtle cues, delayed gratification, and anticipation can magnify emotional responses, and this knowledge guided the construction of the gift's unfolding drama. My sister's initial reactions, curiosity, hesitancy, and gradual realization, were precisely the arc I had envisioned, while the surrounding guests contributed to the amplification of the moment with murmurs, widened eyes, and whispered speculation. The absence that was meant to diminish my role instead intensified focus, creating a vacuum that the gift naturally filled. The unfolding event demonstrated the extraordinary power of indirect influence. One does not need to be physically present to assert impact, but rather to anticipate responses, manage timing, and orchestrate perception. Each layer of the gift added to the tension, ensuring that astonishment and recognition would peak at the precise moment, leaving a lasting impression. I could see how my sister's dawning comprehension, combined with the collective reactions of the family, transformed the scene from a simple act of gift-giving into a demonstration of strategy, patience, and intelligence. This carefully executed moment illustrated that influence is often most profound when subtle, indirect, and strategically timed. The emotional crescendo reinforced the idea that meticulous preparation and understanding of human attention can transform what is intended as marginalization into a platform for acknowledgement and respect. The gift became more than a token, it was a statement of presence, a testament to foresight, observation, and the power of patience. By converting exclusion into a tool for impact, I had created a scenario in which absence became one of the loudest statements possible, asserting authority and leaving a mark that would resonate long after the wedding had concluded. This final act served as a demonstration of the enduring effect that subtle, thoughtful, and strategically executed influence can achieve, proving that careful planning and psychological insight can turn even punitive situations into moments of undeniable power and recognition. In conclusion, this story is a testament to the power of patience, strategy, and the subtle art of influence. What initially seemed like exclusion and limitation was transformed into a moment of undeniable presence, proving that absence does not equal irrelevance and that careful observation, foresight, and intelligence can create impact far greater than direct confrontation. Each step of this journey demonstrates that our actions, when thoughtfully planned and executed with precision, can turn challenges into opportunities, frustration into empowerment, and oversight into recognition. The lesson is clear. Even when underestimated or sidelined, we have the ability to assert our presence, command attention, and leave a lasting mark that resonates with others long after the moment has passed. To everyone watching and listening, remember that life often presents situations where you may feel excluded or overlooked, but those very moments can become your greatest opportunities for creativity, strategy, and quiet power. Trust in your patience, trust in your preparation, and trust in your ability to turn setbacks into statements of strength. Every obstacle is a stage for ingenuity, every challenge a chance to demonstrate resilience, and every moment of exclusion a space to show your true value in ways that cannot be ignored. I want to take a moment to thank you all for your attention and engagement. Sharing this story reminds us that the greatest victories often come from our ability to act thoughtfully, observe keenly, and respond with intelligence and grace. May this message inspire you to see challenges as opportunities, to embrace strategy over impulsiveness, and to understand the extraordinary power that lies in patience and preparation. Good luck to each one of you in applying these lessons in your own life. Remember, even when the odds seem stacked against you or doors appear closed, there is always a way to assert your presence, make your impact, and leave a mark that will be remembered. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for allowing this story to remind us all of the strength that comes from quiet, calculated action and the courage to turn every situation to your advantage.